If you're a coach who wants to take an extended amount of time off or to reduce your working hours, for example, over the summer holidays or another time, then in today's episode of the show, I'm going to explore what I do in my business to help me take time off and reduce my working hours over the summer holidays with kids. Let's dive in. Hi there, welcome to the Wholehearted Business Show. I'm Laura. I help heart-centered and highly sensitive health and life coaches get more clients, grow their businesses, and live their best lives while they do it. And today on the show, we're talking all about kind of blending motherhood and business, taking time off over the summer, reducing your working hours over the summer, all of that kind of general conversation. So like I say, this is not just for people who are parents. It can be if you just want to take some time off or reduce how often you work or whatever over an extended period of time. So here in the UK, our children from school, they will get 6 weeks off. It's usually more than 6 weeks, let's face it. By the time you get all the dates in, they have 6 weeks off for summer. And as someone who's a mum and who works and all that kind of stuff, it is a juggle. Who is now kind of technically a single mum, it is a bit of a juggle to kind of make all this work. And this will be probably my 6th or 7th year, I think, since Finley left nursery, where we would have the holidays kind of still in nursery, where I've had to manage the 6 weeks holidays basically. And this is the first time as well where I've had both of them. So usually in the past, Freya, when she was smaller, she still went to nursery for a couple of days a week over the summer. This is the first actual holidays that I'm going to have 2 children to have to take care of without any kind of, arranged school childcare type thing. So yeah, I wanted to share kind of how I'm approaching it, and I've tried to better prepare myself this time than I have in previous years. But like I say, all of these tips are also going to be applicable to you if you are just wanting to take some time off over a longer period of time and so on. So the first tip that I have is to really think about what you want this period of time to look like. Like, how does it need to look like if you have logistical things that need to be taken care of? Like, what are the needs that have to happen? But also, how would you want it to look in an ideal world? So that's how I start off with the 6 weeks holidays. I think, okay, so I don't even think that in an ideal world I'd want to have the entire 6 weeks off and nothing going on. It would feel like too long not being in my business, and I like my business. I like the work that I do, so that would feel too long. But I do want to vastly reduce how many hours I'm working and kind of like make sure that I take all this into account. And, ideally what I'm aiming for this particular 6 weeks holidays is that I have a Tuesday where I have some childcare from my parents, and that is going to be my client day. So that's when I'll have meetings and things on. Those slots are going to fill up really, really quickly. So those Tuesdays are probably going to be back-to-back client sessions. I would also like to have a week completely off in the holidays as well. So that's one other thing. And I also need at least one other day a week to do other things in the business as well. So that's kind of what I'm aiming for. And one of those days is going to be on a weekend, because that's when the kid's dad's going to be able to help out with that as well. So that's kind of how I want it to look, is basically 6 weeks of 1 day a week seeing clients, 1 day a week working, and then the rest of it free to do stuff with the kids. So that's kind of how I wanted to look. So that was the starting point, was getting that in place. And then now that I kind of had an idea of like, this is how I wanted to look, it's like, okay, so how do I make that happen? What needs to, how do I plan for this? I'm not going to have time to do a weekly episode of the show in the way that I do it right now, although it doesn't take me very long, to be fair. I'm not going to have the time to necessarily do that over the 6 weeks. So how can I prepare? We're going to come into that in a second. So what does that need to look like? I'm also going to take a 2-week break from the show. So I'll always take a 2-week break at Christmas. In my mind, it was always winter solstice and summer solstice. But I decided to, instead of doing the summer solstice break, to push that back into August, because it makes way more time. Yes, it's not as seasonally pleasing as it is taking them both over the solstices, but it makes a lot more sense for me to take it over August. So in August, it's going to be a 2-week break of this show. But otherwise, there's still going to be episodes of the show. So that was one thing. So it's kind of looking at your tasks. And I think part of it is looking as well as like, what are in terms of like keeping your business going, what are the ongoing things that you still want to show up for, and what are projects and things that actually you just want to have finished before the time off that you're going to take. So for me, that was thinking, okay, so the show is something that I want to continue with that break. Obviously my clients I'll be serving, Wholehearted Business clients I'll be serving, but everything else, there's nothing really other than that I want to be working on. So basically I want to just be showing up for my clients and doing the show, and that is what the summer's going to look like. I'm not going to be promoting anything else. I'm not going to be launching anything else. Obviously, I'm going to be delivering on stuff. And also I've got the searchable show method, but that's going to be dripped out and that's going to be delivered over the summer as well. So those are the things that I need to deliver on and to do. And also asking yourself, is that doable in the time that you have available? Is that going to work? And like I say, I think by the most part, I think it's going to work for me. So we've kind of planned that out and we know what that's going to look like. And then the next step is to batch up stuff that you can do to take some of the time out of the summer. So what that's going to look like for me is I am actively batching up episodes of the show. I'm doing some interviews as well with people. So I'm going to get these episodes all done and I've got it all mapped out. I've got my content plan, I've got my searchable show dashboard that I use, and that has got everything planned out until the first week in September. So I want to have everything prepped and created, maybe not necessarily scheduled up, ready and edited, but at least recorded. That's my aim. I'd love to get more than that done, but my aim is to get everything recorded and ready so that the show is mostly kind of taken care of over the summer. So I'm going to batch those up. The other thing that I'm doing is that I am still kind of pulling together some of the materials for the searchable show method, because they're going to drip out over the 8 weeks, but I want all of that stuff finished and ready and prepped, ready to just drip each week when as and when that stuff is due to become available. So that means that I can just focus my time on serving my clients, being present on Voxer, all of that kind of stuff. That's what I want to focus on and over the summer. So doing that bit of batching and prepping in advance, and that's where I've always fell down in the past with the summer holidays, is I just haven't prepared enough. And also one of the things that I've recognised is that this period, again, for me being a mum, this period right before the end of school, like from the May half term into kind of July, it is nuts. It is nuts. It is so busy. Everything seems to be so busy. There's so many extra things on at school. It is just really, really busy. So, and to be fair, I am prepping a little bit late, to be fair, this year. In an ideal world, if I could have prepped a little bit earlier, that probably would have been better, recognising that this season, this kind of period of time is just really, really intense. So batch up what you can batch up, prep what you can prep, look at what's an ongoing task, what's a project task, does anything need to be finished off, how can you approach getting those things finished off. And to be fair, what I'm also doing in this kind of period before the summer holidays is there is a weekend when I can take myself away and just bottom out some things that just need to be finished, because I'd rather just do that little bit of extra work just to get them done, off my plate, finished, and then it means that the summer holidays is a lot more open and free and smooth to do its thing. My next tip is to communicate with people that you are going to be working less hours. So this is about telling your clients, if you are taking an extended amount of time off, if it's the 6-week holidays, etc., that you are not going to be as available, or when you are going to be available. So what I'll be doing is I'll be sending an email out to all my clients saying, hey, just a reminder, I am in the summer holidays, it's this 6 weeks. What that means is I will be doing this on these days. These are the expectations to have of me. If anything's urgent, this is what to do, all of that kind of conversation. I'm still very present and I still respond to people. So in all actuality, there's no difference in the service that anyone's getting from me who's a client, really. It's more my availability that's a little bit more squeezed, that's different. But I'm always responding, I'm always available in that way. That's the kind of main difference. So communicate with people, let them know what's going on, set boundaries if you need to set boundaries. You are, a good reminder, you are allowed to take time off. You are allowed to work reduced hours over a period of time. You are allowed, it is your business. You are allowed to do that. Communicate, set boundaries if you need to. Set boundaries with yourself as well. Sometimes that's a really useful thing to do too. It's just to actually have the boundaries with yourself so that you don't end up doing extra work that you shouldn't really be doing. Be prepared to be a bit flexible if you need to. I think especially, and this is maybe more applicable to parents, but as we know with kids, and as I've been sharing a bit of the stuff that's been happening with Finley and stuff, the shit hits the fan sometimes. Sometimes things just happen. Sometimes things don't work out. You've got to be a little bit flexible. And what it often happens is that in the time that you've got available, when you are working less hours over the 6 weeks holidays, you don't have as much time necessarily available to be flexible. But for me, what that flexibility would look like is, right, okay, I've had to drop a day somewhere. I'm going to have to pick that up on an evening because I am still required to be present in my business, but just not anywhere near as much as what I usually would be. But I'm happy to do that if I need to. It's more about kind of protecting, for me anyway, my experience of this is, what I find really stressful is trying to multitask when I am meant to be present with my children. So what I'm going to try to avoid doing, and which I have done in the past, I'm going to try to avoid it, is I'm going to avoid listening to Voxer messages while they are around, because I can't concentrate and I need to concentrate on what people are saying in those messages. So it's things like that, like just trying to be flexible around where in the spaces of time that you've got available and what's going to work for you and what's not. And for me, a boundary that I need to have with myself is that when I am fully present with the kids, I'm not also trying to think about or worrying about something, and rather that is going to have to wait until they go to bed, and I will deal with it then, or to a day when I've got some childcare available as well. So that really makes sense too. Also for me, just a few other things that these are a bit more kind of specific to being a parent, but the 6 weeks holidays, like for me, I try and plan some things out with friends, so we've got some activities and things planned. We'll go and glamping for a week. We might go down and visit my relatives in Brighton for a week. It's trying to like find those pockets of time to do things. And again, one of the reasons that I wanted to run my own business was that I was going to be able to take a lot of time off to be with my children. Like that was one of the things that I wanted to do. And it's a kind of good to remind myself of that I need to structure things so that I am able to do that. And like I say, the good thing is if I did have a holiday with the kids down to my relatives in Brighton, I could still work on the Tuesday, as long as my aunt and uncle would look after the kids. I could still do that from there. Again, one of the beautiful things about running a coaching business and being, location independent is that I can do that. So that's really helpful. But yeah, planning out the activities, thinking about what we're going to do, having some ideas, having some low cost ideas as well, so that it's not, you're not just spending loads of money, because the 6 weeks holidays can be very, very expensive. And yeah, just kind of managing and planning all these things in can really, really be helpful when it comes to this kind of blend of, being full-time kind of parenting and still running your business, albeit in reduced hours. It's kind of like finding that thing for you and figuring out what it needs to look like for you. But I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is really planning in advance and deciding how this needs to look and putting those plans in place early on. And also recognising that for me, I don't know whether or not my income will take a little dip or not in August. It certainly hasn't in July. So far July's like already, and it's literally, I've just realised like literally only as I record this, it's literally the very, very start of July. And actually it's already a really good month. But and August might take a bit of a dip. That might be the case for you, that your income might take a dip if you're not being really visible and present, and depending on what systems and things you've got set up. So what that might make you reflect on is, do you need more of an automated sales system that will bring in sales even when you're not really active in your business, and what that needs to look like? That could be a potential thing that you need to consider as well. So there's lots of different variables, and it is just about thinking, how do you want this to look? How does it need to look? How can you start to build some of these things in earlier on, prepare for things? And actually, for some people, what they might want to do is look at their entire business model if their income is really severely affected by them taking an extended amount of time off, because there are things that you can do to change that. And again, I've talked before about the ways that I've changed some things in my business model so that income is more steady, I've got better cash flow, all of that kind of stuff, which does make a big impact when it comes to the summer holidays as well. So just to recap some of those tips, first of all, decide what you want this period of time to look like, then plan for it, decide like when is it that you're going to be available to work, kind of create the systems and structures if you need to have them so that they're in place, batch stuff up in advance if it needs to be batched up, looking at what's an ongoing project, what needs to be doing all the time regularly versus what's a project and what can be finished before the time off that you want to take can be really helpful. Communicate with people, let people know that you're not going to be as available, what that means for them, and so on. Have your boundaries with other people and with yourself too. Also be prepared to be a little bit flexible, but within your boundaries, kind of decide like what's your kind of hard boundaries and what is a bit more flexible, because again, we just don't know what's going to potentially happen, and sometimes it's useful to do that. My personal parenting tip is to not try and multitask unless you've got really chill kids and who are a bit older. Like, mine are still, Finley's old enough, but Freya is not. So for me personally, multitasking is just going to stress me out. So I'd rather kind of have that boundary where I am just present and doing stuff. And like I say, the 6 weeks holidays, it can be intense. It can, we want to be thinking about doing things with our kids and activities and things like that. For me, it's always like this big thing where I've got my birthday, Finley's birthday, and all of the back to school stuff to prep. And also I've got a bit of an eye on the Wholehearted Business launch, which happens in September, and what I want to prep for that. So there are a few other things. Again, it's like, it's not maybe just thinking about that period of time, but it's also kind of what comes after, and therefore what you need to do in the holidays. So for me, it's like, there's all the back to school stuff. So it's the uniform, it's all that stuff, which often comes with like decluttering all of the clothes and stuff that they've got, all of that kind of stuff. So there's that back to school stuff. There's like birthdays that need sorting out. And again, if you're going on holiday, there's all that kind of stuff. So it's, for me, because I look at my entire life and business often in the same kind of space, it's all of these things need to be factored in. And that really, really helps. And again, it is this blend of being a parent and running a business, and it really comes to a crux point, I think, in the summer holidays. Like, this is where we have to kind of figure out what that needs to look like for us. So yeah, but I hope that's given you some ideas. If you are a parent, or if you are just wanting to take some time off, it's given you some things to think about and how you might balance this up, how you might want to approach it in your coaching business. As always, I'd love to know if you found this episode helpful. If you're watching on YouTube, please give me a thumbs up, give me a like, leave me a comment, let me know, how are you approaching, if you are a parent, how are you approaching the summer holidays? What does that look like for you? Do you have childcare? Do you not? What does all of that kind of look like for you? And if you're listening on the podcast, please do jump into the description, click the link, leave me a message, tell me how you're going to approach all of this too. Okay guys, I will see you next week. Take care. Bye.